Hey, so welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm going to use the Marshall DSL 20H today with a couple of stomps and try and get what I think to be Megadeth's most brutal album tone, and that's Endgame. So let's get into it. I thought just to start with, I'll talk a little bit about the album, as I think it's totally overlooked by many metal fans, many Megadeth fans. It's got some of the greatest Mustaine riffs in it, I think, and it's just so heavy and brutal. It was, I think, a really great production. I was really excited when it came out, and the first time I heard all those songs, like 1320, I really was blown away for the first time in years, and they really stepped it up. And Chris Broderick coming to the band, I think Dave really wanted to show off his capability. And so from the first listen, when I first heard Dialectic Chaos, and Dave and Chris are just trading those crazy solos, and it was just so intense, and they just kept on stepping up the whole way. The album's just really heavy. It's just intense. It's got some fantastic Mustaine riffs that I think it's just overlooked. It's just been forgotten. Kiko's there now. Like Dystopia's it's a killer record. I won't talk about Dystopia, but Endgame's just extremely solid, just really great production, and just so heavy. When you get to parts like Head Crusher, and it's just that. That riff, that whole down picking thing, it just cuts through, and I thought it was just a really good sounding record. So when Chris came to the party, he had his Angle amps, and I just thought that was the real saturation on that tone. And Dave was just starting out with the JVM 410, and that was a new Marshall at the time, and I wasn't exactly sure where that sort of landed in the ballpark, like where was the gain, where was the distortion. The album was super heavy, and Dave had just come out with the 412 signature stack from Marshall with the metal grill and vintage 30 speakers. I should have got one. They were really good. They weren't really dear, but I didn't know it was a limited edition, and I missed out. But I'll just get into it now. The gear I'm using today is my Dave Mustaine VMNT signature Angel of Death guitar with live wire pickups and ebony fingerboard. It's made in Korea, and it's about 14 years old, yeah. So it's still holding up strong. It sounds fantastic. I love this guitar. It's got a great feel to it. And then we get to the Marshall DSL 20H, and really this amp is so good. I just love it. I use it in so many videos, and it's really because I just love the tones of it. I just love sitting with it and playing this, and this is actually one of the favorite tones I've ever got, and it's just such a basic tone to get, and it's so heavy and chunky. It just makes the amp shine. And there's nothing really special about my settings, as you can see there. There's nothing outrageous. The gain is just moderate, and the amp on its own, we'll just play the amp. That's a really solid tone. I just think it could do with a little tiny bit of aggression added to the front end and just tighten up a little bit. So I'm not actually going to add any EQ to the effects loop or do anything in that sense. All I've got running here is the Boss NS2 in the front, just to tighten things up, keep the noise down. And I've got the Super Overdrive Boss SD1, and I was using the Gary Holt boost just to add that little tiny bit of fizz and little tiny bit of hair on that tone, just to make it really jump out and be aggressive. But it's not a necessity. We'll work through other things just to try and make it work. But just to start, this is the Boss SD1 on its own, just added to that same riff. And to be honest, the tone's already 90-something% there. You could really just dial up just a little tiny bit more drive on that if you want, and just maybe take the drive up to about 8 or 9 o'clock, and it'll get you right in the ballpark. Look, I'd almost be happy just with that, just using the Boss SD1, NS2 and the amp, but I've just wound the drive back, but compensating for turning up the drive in the Boss SD1, I'm just adding a slight bit more gain through the Gary Holt boost, and this EQ, it just really adds that dimension to the tone that just really makes that aggression. I'll just kick that in now. You can hear how that just really saturates it. It just makes it, it still has that articulate feel to the playing, but just adds an extra level of aggression to it. So look, there's other ways that you could punch that in. You don't necessarily have to use the Gary Holt boost. I was thinking, even if you wanted to use the 6-band EQ, just to add a little bit of intensity to the SD1. If you have the 6-band EQ, just a slight frown, you don't need much at all. But this is kicked on with that. And that's really cool too. It's just, it comes down to your personal preference. You don't need a whole lot. You can just get by just using Boss SD1, just an overdrive. Going back to the Gary Holt boost now, just as I had it set. And if you add some delay to that, I've got some delay running through the effects loop, but this is what happens if you add some delay, like for a solo or... And you really just have a killer sound there in your fingertips. Just adding the delay just makes it have that huge dimension for solos. But what's even cooler is these riffs are just so fun to play, and they're just so Dave Mustaine. All those little nuances that he has in his playing, like... That's just absolute classic Dave Mustaine right there. That just really complex, hard riffs to play, but they're just so fun. It's like a guitar challenge technique workout all in one. And so look, if you haven't heard this album for a while and you got your DSL sitting there, dive in, learn some of these riffs. You won't be disappointed, I promise. They're just really fun. But all that said, guys, hope you had a good time. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.